The topic of this day is IAM, the stands for Identity and Access Management. You can find that service on the AWS Management Console just over here under Security, Identity and Compliance. Can you see over here? IAM. It stands for Identity and Access Management. Now, what's the purpose of this service? The real intent of the service is that you create the users, groups, and roles, and you define the permissions for them so that you can manage the resources effectively for your organization or the entire environment. Now, the thing is that whenever you sign up, so you all have signed up for a free tier account. The free tier account that you sign up for, it is a root account, right? Any account that's being signed up using a credit card or a debit card number, it's a root account. So your organization, once it gets started, to start using the Amazon Web Services, so they will use the credit card or debit card to sign up with AWS. So any account that's being used, that's being signed up using any payment information, a credit card or debit card, it's a root account, right? So if you see on the top over here, this is my root account, and this displays my first name space last name. Right? So first name space last name. So this is my root account. I have all the privileges. So root account is the topmost on the hierarchy. So how exactly the things work for you in the business environment? So let's get started over here. So over here, the main concept you have to understand is that how exactly the root account works for you. So the root account is also called a master account. What is that? So let me just highlight that fact. We have this something called root account. Sometimes you also refer to it as a master account. It's a root account or it's a master account, right? Now, a root account or a master account is the one that you use. You sign up using the payment information, which means your credit card or your debit card. You include the payment information to sign up for that. Now, the thing is that root account can be signed up by any individual. You can sign up for that, or your organization will sign up. Now, right now, we're talking about the organization level. We're talking about at the enterprise level. So the root account is the highest or the topmost in the hierarchy. Now, the root account owner, what's the purpose of it? So what's the purpose of having the root account? The main purpose of the root account, or I would say that there are two main functions. The functions of the root account are, first of all, create IAM users. Now, what are these IAM users? These IAM users are the solutions architects. These are the developers, testing professionals, accounting professionals, people from finance, management. These are the people who will be performing day-to-day tasks by signing up to your root account from their own accounts or using their own user ID and passwords. Right? You're going to be creating their accounts so that they access. So the IAM users or the IAM accounts are not separate accounts. These are the portion of the root accounts. So you give them access to the root account, and they sign up using their own user ID and password. So for the IAM users, what you define as a root account owner, there are two things that you define. The first one that you define is the authentication. Authentication means that what are the credentials that they will be using to sign in. So under the authentication standard, there are two different authentication mechanisms that are being used. First one is the username and password. So what is that? We have username / password for them to sign in to the AWS Management Console. So the IAM users will be signing in to the root account management console using their own user ID and password. So you have to create the username and password so for them to sign in to the AWS Management Console. So that's the first level of authentication that you'll be defining. So as a root account owner, you'll be defining the authentication. The second thing that you'll be defining is the authorization. What do you mean by authorization? Authorization means that you define the access type. What kind of access each IAM user should have. Okay, so it's very important that as a root account owner, as a master account owner, you create the IAM users or the accounts, and it's extremely important that you define the authentication, the username and passwords for them, and also you define the authorization, means that what kind of access each account or the IAM user should have. So that's a first function. I would say this is let me just write down over here. This is the first functionality of the root account owner. The second function of the root account is, or the second purpose of having the root account is that the root account manages the billing as well. Manages billing, and also sometimes the root account owner can track users' activities. So there's a service called CloudTrail, but we're going to discuss that service afterwards. As a root account owner, you can easily just track that what exactly the users are doing. I'm talking about the IAM users. So these users are the IAM users. Fine. So you create the IAM users and you can track the user activities. For example, at what time they're signing in through their accounts, at what time they sign out. And during that period when they signed in and signed out, in that particular time frame, what kind of operations did they perform? Did they delete something? Yes, if they deleted or terminated, what were those resources? Did they launch something? If they lost something, then what type of resources they launched? Every information you can just capture using a service called CloudTrail. We're going to discuss that afterwards. So these are three main functionalities of the root account. First of all, it's the first account that any company signs up for before they or after they say that, okay, we let's go ahead and start using AWS. It's a first account, right? So you create IAM users and accounts. You define the authentication and authorization. A root account can also manage the billing of multiple IAM users, and also a root account owner can track the user activities. Now, the root account owner can be your team lead, your manager, your director. So any individual who has the entire access, so he can be the root account owner. So it's a first account to sign up for, and after the root account has been created, then multiple IAM users are being created. So how this works for you? So this works in such a way that if this is the root account. Now, by the way, this is a very important fact for you to understand. A root account is not supposed to perform any technical functions or operations. Meaning, root account is not supposed to launch, terminate, or change any resources in the business environment. This thing you have to understand in a very much in a better way. A root account owner in a business environment. See, the thing is that right now I'm not talking about the free tier account. Even your free tier accounts are the business accounts. But this thing is very, very important for you to understand. In the business operations, as per the best practice, a root account is not supposed to perform any launching, termination, or deletion of the resources. It performs only three operations. One is creating IAM users and managing them, creating or defining the authentication and authorization, manage the billing, and track user activities. Now the question really is that, okay, if the root account is not supposed to perform anything other than the three functions, then who performs the launching, deletion, designing, implementation, deployment, development? Who are those people? IAM users. So the root account owner is not supposed to perform any technical operation, including launching, termination, deletion, changing of the resources. as per the best practice. It can do that, but to make the things quite, I would say, process oriented, we don't favor the root account performing all these operations. These should be performed by the IAM users. Okay, so the root account owner right now, so this account will create multiple IAM users. For example, this is the IAM user 1. This is the IAM user 2. And this is the IAM user N. So a root account can create multiple IAM users. Now the question really is that who are these IAM users? These IAM users are the one that belong to, or these people are the one that belong to the IT and software teams in your organization. I repeat my statement. The IAM users are the one that belong to the IT and software departments or the teams in your organization. So for example, they can be the architects, developers, system administrators, networking professionals, database administrators, accounting professionals, people from finance, management, pre-sales, and so on. So any person who, or any individual in your organization who needs access to the AWS account to perform day-to-day operations, we create or we manufacture the IAM user for that particular employee and we give them the access. Now, the question really is how you give them the access. For each user, you just tend to create the username and password. That is quite acceptable. The one thing that you have to understand is that how exactly these IAM users, they inherit or they get the permissions. So the permissions are being given by a concept that's called the JSON policies. What are they? These are called JSON policies / documents. Now these are being assigned to the IAM users. They define the permissions. What they define? The permissions. They define the access level, what type of access each individual should have. See, the thing is that if they are, let's suppose, 500 people in your IT and software teams who need access to AWS, it is quite obvious that not everyone will get every type of access. If you work in your organizations, you will see that the access level to different resources and applications and services are being segregated depending upon your job function, your job profile, your team, your business unit, right? So in every organization, that's how it's being structured. And the same thing applies over here. Fine. We make use of JSON policies and documents to apply the permissions to the IAM users. That's how we go about doing it. Fine. That's how we manage the permissions. All right. So to recapitulate or to reiterate everything, we have the root account. That's the first account an organization or a company signs up for. After that, it creates multiple IAM users. The purpose of the root account is that it defines the authentication and the authorization of the IAM users. Also, it manages the billing and it will track the user's activities. Fine. Now, the root account is not supposed to perform any day-to-day operations, including launching, termination, or deletion. So it performs all the activities. Now, the root account is not supposed to perform any of these operations. It will just create the IAM users. So the main purpose or the main functions will be performed by who? By the IAM users. The main functions will be performed by IAM users. They will perform the designing. So they will perform the following actions. They will implement following actions. They will implement designing, deployment, development, and launching of the resources. They will perform these actions. So they perform everything. out there. And what kind of permissions they can define? You define using the JSON policies or the documents. That's how you apply the permissions. Fine. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's go back to the AWS Management Console, and I just click on IAM under Security and Identity Compliance. Let's go to IAM right now. Now, once you just go to the IAM, I already have, this is the IAM dashboard. Now, I already have the things created beforehand. So let me just get rid of them so that I can just create everything from scratch and show you the exact stuff that how it's been configured from beginning. So let me just delete these things real quick. And here we go. Fine. So the thing is, if I just go to this IAM dashboard, this is how it looks like. This is how it appears to you. Now, right now, I don't have any users. You can see that the users are 0. And you can see the description. Create IAM users to grant people or applications access to your account. So I will create the IAM users to give access to my root account. This is my root account, right? I will create the IAM users or the IAM accounts and give them a portion or access to my root account. So they will be signing in to my root account using their own user ID and passwords. Okay, so let's go to the users right now, and let's do one thing. Let's start creating the users real quick. So I just create 5-6 different users and start defining the permissions afterwards. I click on add user. So let me just define the first user as Steve. Let me add the other user as, for example, Kunal. Then let's add another user, Tom. Then Mahesh. Then Suresh. Fine. So I can define multiple users like this, one by one. Davik. Fine. So these are 6 users I've created one by one. So what I've done is that I've used their first name as a username. Sometimes you can use the initial of the first name and the last name. For example, Steve Jobs, I can just make it as S Jobs. Okay. But for the simplicity, I've just mentioned their first name as a username. I mentioned the first name as the username. So I can add multiple users in one single shot. I can just create multiple users in one single shot. But as of now, I just make it simple, and I will just create only 6 users right now. Now, coming to the main thing. So these are the usernames. Now you have to define the access type. Now, I showed you when I sketched on my notes that there are 2 types of access you give. One is access to the AWS Management Console. So they will be signing in to the AWS Management Console to perform day-to-day operations. And I also give them the programmatic access. This is the kind of, you can say, access key and the secret access key. Now, what is this? I'll show you afterwards that how they look like. This means that if I checkmark this option, each of these 6 people will get an access key and a secret access key, which they will be using to sign in to my AWS account using API, CLI, command line interface, SDKs, other development tools, or any third-party software. So any external software or tool can be used to access the AWS resources using these keys. I'll show you that afterwards, that how they look like. So as of now, I will define both the levels of access for these 6 users, the programmatic access and access to the AWS Management Console. Fine. Now, let's do one thing. Let's go with the console password. See, I can go with the auto-generated password right now, or I can just set a custom password for all of them. Fine. I can set a custom password. So let me just set up a custom password. Fine. So this is my custom password that I've set for each individual. If you want, you can just go with the auto-generated. Then we can just click on this option, need password reset. This means that if I have this option checked marked, then in that case, what happens in that case is that the very first time these users log in using the password that I give to them, they will get the prompt to change that password. Okay, it's a good practice that you allow these users to set the passwords on their own the first time they sign in. So for simplicity, I'll just uncheck this option so that I don't have to change the passwords if I sign in on behalf of any one of these users, to show you that how exactly they will sign in and access the resources. Okay, so to recapitulate or to reiterate, I have created 6 users: Steve, Kunal, Tom, Mahesh, Suresh, Davik. I've defined 2 access types: programmatic access, which means that each of these individuals can use the keys. I'll show you that how they look like to access the AWS using some external softwares or tools. Then also they will get access to the AWS management console. I will set a custom password for them, and I will uncheck this option so that we don't have to change the passwords at next sign in. Fine. Now, once we are through with this entire stuff, let's go ahead and click on next permissions. So I just click on not now. So this has created my 6 different users. See, the next thing that I have to do is that I have to set the permissions. What do you mean by permissions? I have to set exactly that how these users would be using your resources. So the permissions are very important. The reason being because if I don't assign any permissions to any one of these users, they can sign in, but they will not be able to access anything. Okay. So there are 3 different ways to assign the permissions. First one is that I can add the users to a group. A group is a separate feature. We will discuss that afterwards. Now, as per the best practice, you should always assign the permissions by adding the users to the group. We'll discuss that afterwards, that what a group is. You can copy the permissions directly from the existing users. Unfortunately, I don't have any existing user as of now, or I can attach the existing policies directly. Okay, from here I can attach the existing policies directly to these users. But I just make it simple as if now. I just create the username and passwords. I will not assign any policy or permissions for any one of these people. I will not do that. So I simply click on next add tags. Now tag is a key value pair just to assign to the users. It's of no use as of now. It is just for the documentation. You can see it's an optional thing. It is just information of your configuration. That's it. I click on next review at the bottom right hand corner and click on create users. So before I click on create users, you can see it says these users have no permissions, and we know that. We can assign the permissions afterwards. So what we have done so far, these are 6 users with 2 types of access. I've set a custom password. They will not get any option to change the passwords at first sign in. And as of now, there's no permission or permission boundary. They don't have any access type. I'm sorry, they don't have any permissions. Of course, they have 2 access types, but they don't have any permissions. I click on create users and my users are being created. So let me show you right now. So here we go. It's a success. Okay, it's a success. Now each of these users, Steve, Kunal, Tom, Mahesh, Suresh, Davik. Each of these users will have these access keys and the secret access keys. Okay. Now, in the future, I will show you that how exactly you use these keys to make use of the CLIs, the command line interface, or APIs, or SDKs, any external tools to access the AWS. So each of these users will get their own access keys and the secret access keys. Each one of these people will get that. So the thing is, I will just make it, I will just, so I've shown you that how exactly it looks like. Now it's very important. Before I click close, so I can send an email. I can click on send email. It will open the email client on my machine, and I can send them the instructions. For example, if I just click on email, it may open my Gmail, and from there I can just send them the instructions that how you can sign in. Okay, it will just open your Gmail account in my case. So I can just click on the email right now, and so that they can sign, and I can just send them individually the login instructions. Now, before I click close, because I have to exit out from this window, I have to exit. Click on download CSV. You download this entire information, including the user names and the keys, in a CSV file. Now, if I just show you, it has just got downloaded. Now, why did I download that? See, the problem is that if I don't download that and I hit close, let me show you. I hit close right now. And if I just go to any of the users, I will not be able to see, for example, I go to Davik's account. Okay, let me just go back once again. Let's go to Steve. I go to Steve's account and go to security credentials. The thing is that if I scroll down, I can only see Steve's access key ID, but not the secret access key. Can you see that? So in the future, if I want to fetch the same information that, okay, for example, I sent an email to Steve, but he didn't receive that. He's asking me for the same information once again. So if I go back and look for the access key ID, but I can't see the secret access key ID. So to be on safer side and for the documentation, it is always appropriate that you download this CSV file. The reason being, once you exit from that window, you can only see the access key ID of those users, but not the secret access key ID. So I can just go to my this document, if you see that, this CSV file, and I can say, okay, Steve, you didn't receive the email. Let me send it you one more time. So I can easily fetch the access key ID and the secret access key ID of Steve. I can just email this information again to him, right? So for the future reference and just for to be on safer side, just in case if the user will ask you for this information again, you can just download this CSV file before you click close on that window. If you don't do that and you have to get the information once again, you can't get it. What you can do is that you can make this inactive. You can just say, okay, let me make it as inactive because I'm not able, I haven't downloaded any CSV file. And I create a new access key by clicking on this option, create new access key, and I can just generate a new access key for Steve. So if you don't download the CSV file and you have to get the same information again, then you can't get it. The only thing is that you make the previous access key inactive and generate a new access key for that individual. Okay, so that's how you go about doing that. Now in the future, I will show you that how exactly this is being used. It's a very simple process. I will show you exactly in that how you use these keys. Fine. Anyhow, I go to these users. Now let's do one thing. Let's log in on behalf of Steve and see that how exactly Steve will log in. So I go to Steve's account, and as of now, Steve has no permissions. Okay, that's fine. But the question releases how he will sign in. The answer is this link will be used by Steve or any other user to sign in. This is the link that will be used by all the IAM users. This is the link that will be used by all the IAM users. Now the thing is that how this looks like. What's the format of it? The format is https:// then we have the account ID. This is the root account ID. .signin aws.amazon.com/console. Fine. Now, the thing is that you can customize it. You can just hit on customize on the right hand side, and you can just set the account alias. You can just type any company name. For example, just type in XY Z AWS. This is my company name. I'm just giving you one example. Click on yes, create. It already exists. Okay. Dash demo. Because no two accounts can have the same URLs or the alias name. So this is you assume it's a company's name. I'm just giving you one example. Click on yes, create. And as you can see that it creates a customized link for the IAM users to sign in from their end. Now, I'll show you the process that how these users will sign in. So we'll sign in. So I will sign in on behalf of Steve. So I click on this copy icon to just copy this on the clipboard, and let's open some other browser. So if you're just trying this thing out on your own, make sure that you have two browsers. So I just pasted this link, and immediately it will recognize the account. Let me show you. So I'm just trying to sign in. It's taking its own time to open it right now. So we have the account ID or the account alias. Then we have the username. So it automatically picks the account alias or the account ID or the root account ID. Then let's type in the username and the password. Fine. Click on sign in. Fine. So as you can see that I'm able to sign in on behalf of Steve. And if I show you at the top right hand corner, Steve @ account ID or the account alias. Steve @ account ID or the account alias. Fine. That's how it looks like. If you want to recognize the root account, or you want to see or you want to identify whether the account you're using or someone is using is a root account or it's a IAM account, the only difference or the main difference you will see is that this is how the display name of the IAM account looks like. It will be the username @ account alias or account ID. Username @ account alias or the account ID. And if I show you the display name of the root account, this is how it looks like. This is how it looks like. Fine. This is how it displays. It's a first name space last name. But the display name of the IAM user is different. User ID @ the account ID or the account alias. So account ID of the root account, or else if you have set the account alias, it will show up that. That's how it looks like. Now, the thing is that, okay, Steve is able to log in. That's perfect. So can he do something? For example, he goes to services and just try to go to EC2 to check out some running instances in this environment. So he goes to EC2 and you will see that he gets, you are not authorized to perform these actions. Okay. So he tries to access, for example, let's imagine CloudWatch. Okay. So he goes to CloudWatch and you can see that there's still this message is popping up. So basically he will not be able to perform any one of the operations. Why? What's the reason? The reason is, for example, he goes to, let's suppose, storage gateway. The reason is we have created the credentials for the IAM users, but they don't have any permissions. That's a main problem. So the question really is how you do that. So the answer is you assign the JSON policies or the documents to the users directly. Now that's not a very effective way. I would say appropriate way, but since we haven't discussed groups right now, I'll show you right now. So I go to users and I go to Steve's account. Then once I go to Steve's account, then I go to this permissions and it says get started with permissions. I click on add permissions over here, add permissions. Now I just click on the option at the extreme right hand side which says attach existing policies directly. I go over there, fine. Now these are more than 400 policies out there that will define the permissions for these users. Okay, there's a whole bunch of list. Let me show you that if I can show you. So you can see that these are the list of the JSON policies. Now let me show you one simple policy. For example, this is the administrator access policy. Now the administrator policy comes under the category of job function. So if I just, for example, go to filter policies and I choose by job function, so we have 10 different policies based upon the job function: administrator access, billing, database administrator, data scientist, and network administrator, system administrator, and so on, view only access, right? So these are the 10 different policies that AWS has pre-configured based upon the job functions or the job profiles. Now the administrator access is the highest level of access you can give to any user. If you see the description at the right hand side, the administrator access, which is a job function oriented policy, will give the full access to AWS services and resources. This is the highest level of access you can render, you can give to any IAM user. So an administrator account or any IAM user to which you assign the administrator access has all the permissions. Everything he can do, he can perform every action. That person who is the administrator can launch, delete, and change any of the resources in your environment. So let me show you one thing. If I expand this policy, I show you the JSON format of that. Can you see that? This is the JSON format. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Okay. Now over here, if you see this policy, if you see this policy right now, this is the version of the policy. And if you see the statement, effect, allow, that there are two types of effect: allow or deny. The two types of effects: allow or deny. Action is, if you see the action, it is asterisk. What do you mean? What do you mean by asterisk right now? Okay, so let me show you. So what do you mean by asterisk? So in any of, so let me just open my this notepad. See, first of all, what do you mean by JSON? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So this is the language we use to define the permissions in AWS. So even you use JSON in CloudFormation templates. So it is JavaScript Object Notation. That's what it stands for. Okay, that's what it stands for. Now the thing is, the question really is that how exactly these policies are being defined or formulated. See, one thing is that there are two types of effect. So we define the effect first of all. Effect out of two types. One is the allow, and the other one is deny. Now, as the name implies, allow will give you access to a few different resources. Deny will block or revoke your access. Fine. Then under effect, after the effect, the next thing is the action. So what action you want to perform? Okay. Now, in this thing, in this example or the JSON policy, the action is asterisk. If you see asterisk in any action or in any policy, asterisk means all, or I would say all or to everything. It includes everything, every action, all. I would say asterisk means that you can perform everything, every action, all actions. Asterisk means everything, all actions. Asterisk means all, everything, anything. So you can perform any of the actions. Okay. So basically asterisk means all or everything. Then under the resource means that which service you're going to be giving access to. Action means every access. Resource means every resource. So asterisk means everything. So even resource means, if I just go back, so we understand what an action is. Then resource is also as asterisk. Resource means that it's a service or a feature within AWS. Now, if you include asterisk under resource, this means that every resource. Fine. So asterisk means everything, all, anything can be accessed. So that's the reason if you see this JSON policy, it allows access to everything. Effect is allow, every action is allowed, every resource, action to every resource, every action to every resource is being allowed. Okay. Now you don't have to deep dive in and understand the basics of the policies. You just have to understand exactly that what they mean. That's it. You don't have to create them. You don't have to structure them from scratch, because you make use of some editors we'll discuss afterwards to generate or to manufacture these type of JSON policies on your own. So you don't have to code, you don't have to do the programming, you don't have to do everything from scratch. You can make use of the editors to create these policies by yourself. We label them as customer managed policy. See, the thing is that if I these are AWS managed. If I just go to if I choose these two things, AWS managed. So AWS managed are the policies that are being created by AWS. These are being pre-configured. But you can also create your own customer managed, which means that you can customize that thing on your own. You can customize that thing on your own. You can include your own statements, your own resources. You can just configure and customize your own actions. So there's a separate lab session where I will show you that how exactly you structure and manufacture the customer managed policies. I'll show you afterwards. Okay. So for Steve, I'll choose administrator access. I'm happy with that. So because Steve should have the highest level of access that I want to give to him. So okay, let's do one thing. Let's go back once again. So I go to my root account. I go to my root account and I choose the administrator access policy to be attached to Steve's account. Okay. So let me just go back once again. I scroll down and I click on next review. Now it's very important for you to understand, and it's a common sense. You will not give this permission to every individual in your organization. Okay. Only few people, for example, the team leads or managers, will get this kind of access, or the people or any individual who has the authority to needs the authority to create IAM users and manage them. So an administrator can also create the IAM users, because you're giving the highest level of access. So the administrators can also create multiple IAM users from their account. Now click on add permissions at the bottom right hand corner, and this assigns the permission to Steve's account. Now let's go back to Steve's account. We signed in, and let me just go back to the home page. And I suppose that I don't have to log out and log back in. If on behalf of Steve, so this is the Steve's account. So I have just added on the administrator access policy to this account. I just did that. So if I just go to EC2 right now, I just go to EC2, you will see that he's able to see these things. Before that, he was getting the message, you are not authorized to perform these operations. And for example, he goes to services. If he goes to S3, so he get every type of access. For example, let me just try to delete something. So for example, I just try to delete this thing. I just click on choose this bucket, click delete on behalf of Steve. Now these are in the root account. So Steve gets the access to the root account. Okay. So I paste it over here, click confirm. So Steve, as you can see, was able to delete the S3 bucket. S3 bucket is a kind of a object-based storage option. We will discuss that afterwards. So Steve can perform every action, delete, change. He can access everything because I have assigned the administrator access to his account. Okay. Now, this thing I've shown you is not the appropriate way, or it doesn't come under the best practice. You should not, technically, you should not allocate the policies to the users directly. You should not do that. Why? See, the thing is that because the thing is that in the organizations, we have to make the things quite process oriented. For that purpose, we use a thing called groups. What do we use as groups? So let me just help you understand what a group is and how exactly you use them. So, what's a group? So a group is a logic collection of IAM users. Okay, it's a logic collection of IAM users. You group the users together based upon their department, teams, business units, job functions. It's a logic collection of IAM users. So you group them. Now the question really is, why there's a need for grouping? See, the thing is that in your organization, the things are very structured, right? You have the top management, middle management, then you have the teams. In the teams, you have team leads, you have project managers, then you have people working as the engineers. So it's quite structured in nature. Fine. So group is also kind of a structuring of the things appropriately and ensuring that everything stays neat and clean. Okay, let's take one example. So let's imagine, so how you create them and what's the advantage. So let's imagine that today you have to just create only, let's imagine 10 IAM users, maybe 20. Okay. Now managing the permissions for these 10 or 20 people is an easy piece of cake. You can do that. Managing permissions for 10, 20 people, maybe 50 people maximum, it's easy. But what if you have people like 100, 200, 500? Then it's it's a chaos, or it's a headache for any administrator to manage the permissions of so many people. Right? Because if you have hundreds of individuals and you have to manage the permissions for them, it's a headache. It will increase the amount of time and effort which is being needed. So you have to invest a lot of efforts and time to manage the permissions of so many people. So to make the thing structured and process oriented, neat and clean, what you do is that you have this, for example, root account / master account. Now what you do is you start creating groups. For example, now how you create the groups? Maybe by the teams, business units, or the job functions. Now let's imagine I have 3 teams in my organization. The first team is, let's imagine, the administrators. So let's make it as admins in the short form. Second team is developers. And the third team is GTEs. That stands for graduate trainees. These are the people that the company has just recruited fresh from the campuses. So the trick is, or the main crux is, that instead of assigning the permissions to the users directly, you assign the permissions to the groups. For example, I will assign the JSON policy, which is the administrator access. I've shown you that how that policy looks like, to this group. Okay. Now let's imagine I have 3 people as admins right now: Steve, Kunal, and Tom. Now all these 3 individuals will inherit the same permissions because they are the part of the group called admin or admins, and in that case they will inherit the same permissions. Now as the size of my admins team grow, for example, afterwards I maybe have, let's suppose, 50 people. So I just create 50 users, assign them to the same group, admins, and each of them will get the same permissions. Each of them will get the same permissions. Let's take one more example. For the developers, they need access to some resources. So I attach some policies for them to give access to certain tools and services. For example, Lambda, code commit. So I assign them policies so that they can access these 2 different services. I assign 2 policies, Lambda and code commit, full access. Let me show you. For example, I can, if I just go back to my root account, I can, let's go to the policies once again. So let's imagine if I just go to policies, just type in Lambda. So I can choose Lambda full access. Can you see that? I can just type in code commit. Now these are being used by my developers, code commit full access. So what I will do is, and I'll show you that how you do that afterwards. I just simply assign these 2 different policies, the full access policies, to the group called developers, and I simply start assigning them to the same group. So for example, we have I have, let's suppose, Mahesh and Davik. So let's take only 2 individuals. So I simply just have the usernames and passwords. I simply assign them to the same group, developers. Now both Mahesh and Davik will inherit the same permissions because they are the part of the same group called developers. Similarly, for the GTEs, I will assign view only policy, which will give them the view or the read access to view only access to all the services, because these are the freshers, these are the graduate trainees. I don't want them to make any changes because they are still understanding how things work for them. So I just assign this policy and start assigning or allocating the users to the same group, and they will inherit the same permissions. So this makes the things quite structured in nature and process oriented. Let me show you exactly how this looks like. It's a very simple process. Okay, so what I will do is, let's go back to the root account. So I just go back to my root account real quick. Right. So I just go back to my root account and I go to groups. So I will just create 3 different groups. Create a new group. Let's name it as admins. Okay. Click on next step. Now to ask me that what policies you want to attach to this group. So I choose administrator access. Click on next step and create group. Similarly, I create another group for developers. Okay, click next step. Now I will assign the policies like, for example, Lambda, full access, then code commit full access. Now you can assign up to 10 different policies to each individual or the user. So code commit full access, next step. So these are the two policies attached to the same group named as developers. Click on create group and this creates my group called developers with two separate policies. Similarly, I create a new group for the graduate trainees, similar as GTEs. Fine. Click on next step. Now I will choose a policy based upon the job function, and the policy I will choose is view only access. So this policy will give them the read only access to all the services. So they can't make any changes. So click on next step and create group. Simple. Now I just show you one example. For example, I go to developers group. This is my developers group. I just click on add user to group because you can see the notification. This group doesn't contain any users. I click on add users to the group and I simply add, for example, Davik and Kunal as my developers. Click on add users. Now both these individuals, Kunal and Davik, who are the part of the group called developers, will inherit the same permissions. If I just go to permissions, these are two policies. So these two individuals in my organization, Kunal and Davik, who are the part of the group called developers, will extract the same permissions, inherit the same permissions, depending upon the policies I've attached to the group they are being allocated to. Similarly, if I go to groups right now, I just go to GTEs. I go to, so there's only one policy, view only access. If I show you that policy, this gives the read only access to all the services. Okay. So if I just go back once again, cancel this right now, go to users, click on add users to the group. I choose Mahesh, Suresh, and Tom. Click on add users. Now these three individuals, Suresh, Tom, and Mahesh, will inherit the same permission, view only access. The reason being they are the part of the same group that's called GTEs. So as I start recruiting more freshers in my organization, I simply create the username and passwords and assign them to the same group. It ensures that the things become structured and it doesn't messes up the entire IAM. Okay, so that's how you manage the users and groups. Okay, that's how you go about doing that. Fine. So these are two main things that I discussed with you right now, groups and users. Okay, so now we'll discuss that what are roles. See, roles are generally used in the cases where you need access or you need to define the permissions for the services and the individuals and for external accounts. So what are roles, by the way? Roles are, they define the permissions. So usually they define permissions for resources and external accounts. Okay, now the thing is that I'll just give you three examples right now. Just try to understand the three examples. They help you to understand exactly what the roles are. Now I go straight away for 1 hour. After that, I'll take all the questions from you. Please make note of the questions on Notepad. Any question put in between, I'll not take that because I may assume that the question is being answered. So, what are the roles, by the way? Why you need it? See, the thing is that in AWS, there are more than 100 services. And not every service will communicate with the other service by default. Every service is separate. For example, if I have a service call, for example, let's go to my main account. If I just go to my services and I go to, let's suppose, this main page, EC2 has no business with S3. Every service is separate. S3 has no business with the CloudWatch. CloudWatch has no business with CloudFormation. Every service is separate. Now, by default, the two services, they don't communicate by themselves. Most of the cases, two services will not automatically communicate. There has to be some permissions that you have to define. For that, you make use of this concept called the roles, or the IAM roles. Okay. Now, how exactly it works for you? It's a very simple concept. I give you three examples. Understand those examples. Out of the three examples, I will show you the implementation of one example right now. So, example one. The example one, in this example, let's imagine we have an EC2 instance. What's an EC2 instance? It's a virtual machine. We discussed that. It is a virtual machine. Now, upon the EC2 instance, for example, you have launched a WordPress site. What is that? It's a WordPress site. Fine. Now, the thing is that this instance is linked to a bucket, an S3 bucket. Now, what is an S3 bucket, by the way? An S3 bucket is nothing but it's a storage option. It works like a Dropbox or Google Drive. It's a content-based storage. So what is this? This is my S3 bucket. Okay. Now, you have the external users. Who are they? These are the external users. And these people they will browse your website. They'll browse your website, they will just reach your instance, and they will upload some images. For example, it works like Instagram. So you're running some website, and the users will have the privilege to push or upload their images, like you upload images to the Facebook or Instagram, something like that. So these users upload or post their videos and images. Now, these images or videos are being pushed and saved to the S3 bucket, which is the storage option. Okay. And when the time comes when these users want to extract or they want to just retrieve the images, so they want to retrieve or pull the images, so it will be extracted from this bucket and users can download them. So the thing is that in a normal situation, the instance never communicates with the S3 bucket by itself. You have to create. So this is a two-way communication. This is a kind of a communication that we need to initiate. A two-way communication or traffic. For that, I need to create an IAM role, attach it a JSON policy. For example, the JSON policy I can attach is S3 full access. Okay, I attach this policy to this role, and what I do is that I assign the role to the instance, so that I authorize the instance to put or get the images from the bucket. I authorize the instance saying, hey instance, you have the privilege to put or get the images from the S3 bucket. Simple concept, fine. So in a normal situation, an instance will not communicate with the bucket by itself. It never happens by itself or automatically. It never happens. So in that case, if there is a need or a scenario where you have to incorporate these settings, in that case, in order to allow the instance to put or get some images or videos for its website, in that case, you have to create an IAM role, assign it a JSON policy, and attach that. So you're going to attach that. Let's write it down again. You have to attach this role. So first of all, you attach the policy to the role, and then you attach the role to the instance. Attach it to the instance so that it gets the permissions. I'll show you this example afterwards. The real implementation of this, the scenario or this example, I'll show you afterwards. Let's take the other example. So this is my example 2. Okay. Now in this example, we discuss about a feature or a service that's called cross region, I would say cross region replication. Cross region application, in the short form, we name it as CRR, cross region application. See, I discussed one thing with you that by default, no two regions can communicate by themselves. There's no direct connection. Now, the thing is that there's some services which allow you to replicate your data. This is the service that will allow you to replicate a sync the data across 2 different buckets that may be located in 2 separate regions. For example, let's take one example right now. There is an S3 bucket. So this is my S3 bucket. Let's imagine it's in Mumbai. In Mumbai, I have an S3 bucket. Fine. Now, the thing is that I will make this Mumbai as my source bucket. On the other hand, I have created another S3 bucket. It is in North California. A bucket is a container in which you can put your data. And this is my destination bucket. Now, whenever you enable this feature cross-regional application, anything that you put in the source bucket automatically gets copied over and saved in the destination bucket. For example, let's imagine we have an object. So there's an image, or this is a video file. This is a video file X that I put in the S3 bucket. Right? I want the ability that it creates a copy of this bucket. This video file X. It's a copy, and save that in my destination bucket. This capability is called the cross-regional application. What is that? This is the CRR, that stands for cross-regional application. Now, once we discuss the S3 bucket, I'll show you exactly that how it's being implemented. It's a very simple process, very, very simple process. Now, the thing is, what I will do is for now, by default, this doesn't happen. Now this happens over some private network. It uses internet, but AWS uses some encryption, or they use SSL or TLS to encrypt the data that flows between two buckets in two regions. The main thing that you have to understand is that you have, in order for this thing to get initiated, you have to create an IAM role with a policy attached to it and assign this role to the source bucket. Fine. So you have to attach the policy to the role, and you then attach it to the source bucket, so that anything that you put in the source bucket, it gets multiplied and copied over. A duplicate copy of that content gets generated and saved in the destination bucket, which is the North California bucket in my case. Right? So in order to have two buckets communicate, even though they belong to two separate regions, you have to create an IAM role assigned to the source bucket, so that anything that you put in the source bucket gets copied over and saved in the target bucket. I'll show you this example once we discuss the buckets afterwards. The main purpose I want to discuss is that, or the main intent is that we need to understand the purpose of a role. The first purpose is that it allows two services to communicate, whether it's from the instance to bucket or from bucket to bucket. So under normal circumstances, they will not communicate by themselves. If they want to coordinate, sync with each other, we have to make use of the roles in that case. Fine. I think this example is pretty much clear. These two examples. I'll give you a third example, which is not based upon the services to service interaction. The third example is the cross account access. Right? Now, I think there was a question coming in that can a client can have multiple root accounts? The answer is yes. For example, let's take one example. I have an organization. Let's take the organization like SpaceX. Okay, SpaceX. Let's suppose they have the infrastructure on AWS. They create two root accounts. So this is my root account 1. Okay, let me just draw it again. So this root account is for production environment, and there's a separate root account created for development environment. So for development. Okay. So that two separate root accounts being maintained by a single organization. Now, under this root account, we have, let me just draw it up once again. So what is the purpose of it? The production account is being used where the live applications are being maintained. On the other hand, the development account is the sandbox where the developers can freely test and develop their applications. Fine. Now, under this development account, I have Steve, who is an IAM user. Steve is an IAM user. Okay. And he wants to push the code to the S3 bucket on frequently basis to update the live applications. So I have the S3 bucket where Where's the S3 bucket? Under the production account. And Steve, who's an IAM user under the development root account, wants to get the temporary access to push the code or update the live applications by pushing some HTML, CSS, or .php files to the S3 bucket. He wants the ability to push the code. Now, the thing is that I don't want Steve to log into my production account. I don't want that. So what I'll do is that I create an IAM role by assigning some JSON policies to it. Okay. Now, Steve will initiate a command. I'll discuss. So if the time permits, I'll show you. It's an advanced concept. He will use a command that is switch role. And from this role, he will get the temporary access to the S3 bucket in other account. So you got the idea. Steve is the IAM user. So see, this account is the external account. Let's understand this thing. Any account that is not local to your root account is the external account. Steve is not the part of the production root account. He's a part of development account. I want him to get the temporary access to the S3 bucket so that on daily basis or weekly basis, he can push the code or he can just maintain the lab applications by pushing the contents to the S3 bucket. But I don't want him to log into my production account. So Steve will initiate a command, switch role from his account, use the IAM role to get the access to the S3 bucket where he can just push the contents, and that's it. This capability is called the cross account access. What is this again? This is called cross account access, which is being facilitated by the roles. So you understood this point. Roles are used in two cases, whether it's a service-to-service interaction or it's interaction between two separate accounts, root accounts, where you want the external user. If I say external user, the user from the other account to access the resources in your account. So it's a access or the communication between two separate root accounts. Okay, so this is the third example that I've given you. So in the first example, I've shown you that how this does access this to bucket, then bucket to bucket interaction, and account to account interaction. Now, right now, I will show you the first example, that how I can just create a role for the instance and assign to it. So what I will do is that I go back. So the thing is that I just go to roles right now. As of now, I have 47 roles. So I don't have to be worried about that because the roles gets created automatically once you start using the services. I click on create role, and the very first thing it will ask you is that it will ask me for which service you want to create this role. So I choose the AWS service, and under choose a service that will use this role is EC2. Because remember one thing, in my example, if I just go back, I want the instance to communicate with this bucket. So going back to the same example once again, I click on EC2 so that it can call upon the S3 buckets in my account on my behalf. I choose it, click on next permissions. Now once I click on next permissions, I choose in the filter policies, I choose S3 and I choose S3 full access. So this is the policy that will give the full access to the S3 buckets in my account. Click on next add tags. This is just an optional value. Click on next review. I can assign a name to this role. Let's name it as access S3 bucket role. That's it. And it will allow the instances to call the S3 bucket on my behalf, because this is the policy I will be allocating to this role. I click on create role, and this creates my role, and you can see that this has been created. This is being created. Fine. Now, I haven't shown you how you just launch the instance, but because this has come up, I just show you a small example. So this role has been created. If I just go to this role, it has access. So this role has been created for the EC2 instance to get the full access to the S3 buckets in my account. So I go to services. See, we haven't discussed how to launch an instance, but I just show you the one simple example because it has come up. So I click on launch instance. For example, let me change my, okay, let's go to Mumbai. So right now, if I just go to launch instance right now, I choose my image. I just want to show you where I just associate the role. So I go to the third step. You can see it says configure instance details. Now this is a process that we follow to launch the virtual machine or the instance. On the third step, you can see the option says IAM role. As of now, it is set to none. I choose this role that I've just created. And once I launch this instance will have the ability to access the S3 buckets in the future. I'll show you exactly that how it's being done afterwards. Because right now, the main purpose is that you understand the relevance of role. So if I assign this role to this instance and I launch this instance or the virtual server, this virtual server will get access to all the S3 buckets in my account. Fine. So this is about the roles. Fine. That's the crux, or this is the essence of the roles. It allows the communication between two different services or features, or it facilitates something called cross-account access, where the external account can access the resources in your account by switching the roles. So that's all about the roles. Now it's a bit confusing. I understand this thing. As we progress further, we'll start using the roles quite often because it's a very common feature that we use in almost every configuration. Fine. So the main thing is that as of now, you have to understand the basic fundamentals. Don't stress too much upon it. The next thing that we'll discuss is the policies. See, the thing is that the policies define the permissions for three entities: users, groups, and roles. That's why you use the policies. You define the permissions for three different entities: users, groups, and roles. Now, the thing is that you can make use of these policies. These are default policies. If you see these policies, these are default one. You can make use of them. But there's a problem. Anything that's default is not as per your taste. You want to customize the things. For example, let's take one example. Let's take one simple example. The example is, let's imagine, and I'll also show you the practical version of this example. So the example that we're taking for the policies is that, let's imagine, let me just go back. So the next thing we'll discuss about the custom policies. Now we discuss what a policy, it's a JSON document. So what is a policy, by the way? Let's write down once again. So policy is a JSON document which defines the permissions. It defines permissions. Now the thing is, policy that we get are default one, but the default policies are not customized, and they may not be customized based upon our taste and the need. For example, let's imagine I have 2 S3 buckets in my account, or maybe let's imagine I have 50 buckets, 50 S3 buckets. right? Now, the thing is that I have an IAM user named as, for example, Kunal. I want to give him the read only access to one bucket only. That's it. I have 50 buckets. But for one IAM user, I want to give that user read-only access to only one bucket. Okay? Now, the problem is, if you go with the default policies, let's imagine, for example, I go to filter policies, I choose S3. S3 read. Let's go to S3 read. Can you see over there? It is S3 read-only access. If I expand it, if I expand this policy, this will give the, okay, if you see the description, this gives the read-only access to all the buckets. If I attach this policy to my IAM user, let's imagine, the main problem that it will induce that it will give the read-only access to all the buckets. But in my case, I have a special need where I have 50 buckets and I want this user to get the read-only access to only one bucket. So this policy is not suitable for me. So what's the solution? The solution is simple. You customize your own policy. You create your own policy. So in this lab session, the two main topics that we're left with, 2 or 3 main topics. This topic is creating a custom policy. I jot down the important steps that will follow, and then I'll show you that how a custom policy is applicable. So this is a lab right now. This is a lab where we see that how you create a custom IAM policy and how you implement that. So the main thing is that how you create it and how you implement it. So, and we'll also see the implementation. So create a custom IAM policy and we're gonna implement it. Okay. So what are the steps? See, the steps are as follows. In the first step, we create a custom policy. First step, I just create 2 S3 buckets, or okay, I already have the buckets right now. So I'm not go with the bucket creation process. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's create 2 buckets so that I can show you exactly that how the things go on. So I create two S3 buckets. Okay. Then I create a custom IAM policy that will give the read-only access to one of the 2 buckets. Okay. So for example, I have 2 buckets, bucket 1 and bucket 2. So the custom IAM policy will give the read-only access to only one bucket, not both. Fine. So I create 2 buckets. I create a custom IAM policy that will give the read-only access to that particular bucket. Okay. Then the third thing I'll do is that I will just create a group. See, even though there's a single user, it's always appropriate that you assign the permissions to the group. Then I will attach custom IAM policy to that group. Okay. Then I will create user and attach it to the same group so that the user extracts or inherits the same permission. In the sixth step, I'm gonna test. I just log in on behalf of user and test that how exactly this works for you. Fine. So let's do that. Let's follow these 6 steps and see how you do it. Just pay attention so that if you have to do it on your own, you understand the step-by-step procedure. So first of all, in the first step, I just create 2 buckets. Now, creating a bucket is a very simple process. We'll discuss the S3 bucket in detail afterwards. I go to the services. I open the S3 under storage. Now, S3 stands for Simple Storage Service. It's a storage service which is object oriented. So I go to the S3 bucket. Now, S3 works like a Dropbox. I already have multiple buckets created. That's fine. I just create 2 buckets and just work around with them. I create a bucket by initiating a command, create bucket, and I have to enter the DNS compliant bucket name. Now the bucket names are unique in nature. This is very important. So the bucket names are unique in nature. No 2 buckets can have the same name. So I can just think of any bucket name right now. Let's type in XYZ-Mumbai, right? XYZ-S3-Mumbai. Okay, so this is a bucket that I'm creating in Mumbai. Region. So the buckets are region-specific resources. Buckets are region-specific resources. So I click on create and create this bucket. Done. So if I just sort by the date created, this is the bucket. I create another bucket named as XYZ-S3 hyphen California. Simply name it as CAL. I choose my California bucket, California region, because I want to create the bucket in California this time. Click create. So as of now, as you can see, I've created 2 separate buckets, one in Mumbai and other in California. So it's taken some time to create the bucket. Let's wait for some time. So in my case, I have 2 buckets. I want to give the read-only access to only one bucket. I have multiple buckets right now. So as you can see that these are 2 buckets that I've just created. One in California, others Mumbai. And apart from that, I have multiple buckets. I want the user to get the read-only access to only one bucket. That is XYZ-S3-Mumbai. This is the only bucket my IAM user should have the read-only access to. That's my main concern. Because if I go with the default policy, it will give the read-only access to every bucket, which I don't want. So what I will do is that I go to the IAM dashboard. Let's go back. What's the next step, by the way? After I create the bucket, I've created a custom IAM policy. Now this is the main step. Please pay attention and see exactly how I implement this step. So I go to the this policies. I click on create policies on the top. You see this option? Then there's a visual editor you will use. If you know how to code in JSON, use it. Else use visual editor. In the visual editor, you choose some options and once it will spit out the JSON policy on its own. The first thing is that it will ask you that choose a service. I click on choose service right now. And which service we are creating this policy for the S3. Fine. Then it will ask me what actions you want to implement. Now for the bucket, we choose list and read. Now what do you mean by list and read? Read means that you can just read the buckets and the content. List means you can list the buckets and its contents. For example, this is the entire list of the buckets. This is a listing. This is a list action. You can see all the buckets in a list. It's a list action. If I go to any of the buckets right now, if I go to any of the, let's suppose buckets, I can list the images in the bucket. It's a list operation. List operation is also a read operation. Okay. So if I go back right now, I choose list and read. I can list it. I can read the documents and the images or the buckets. I'll not go with tagging, writing, permission management, because these are the write permissions. I only go with the read permissions, where I choose list and read. That's it. Then I choose the resources. Okay, so what I'll do is that okay, let me just go back once again. So I've chosen two actions, list and read, under actions. Then I go to resources. I have two statements over here. You chose actions that require bucket resource type. You chose actions that require the object resource type. I click on this resources section, and under the bucket, you can see over here, add ARN. Now, ARN stands for Amazon resource name. It's the identifier of the bucket. I click on add ARN, and you don't have to do anything. Just specify the name of the bucket. If you choose any, this means star, asterisk. This applies to every bucket in my account. But right now, I want to go with only this bucket. Which bucket I want to go for? Let me just show you. XYZ-S3-Mumbai. So XYZ-S3-Mumbai. Okay. XYZ-S3-Mumbai. If I somehow choose any asterisk, this means it includes every bucket. But if I uncheck it and mention the bucket name, it automatically picks the ARN. This is how it looks like. The Amazon resource name. It's the unique identifier of the resources. Fine. I click on add. Then once I add the ARN over here for the bucket, I have to go for the object. Now what's the object? See, object is a data that you put in the bucket. It's a data. So I click on add ARN. Okay, let me just explain you what this bucket is and what this object is, because I don't want the things to be confused over here. So we'll just go back. Over here, we have to understand one thing. This is my bucket. What's a bucket? It's a fundamental container. It can store your data. It can contain your data. And any piece of data that I put in this bucket is called an object. It can be a Word document, a PPT slide, a video, an image, anything. Any piece of data that I put in the bucket is called an object. So what's an object, by the way? Sorry. So an object is a fundamental entity. What is that? It's a fundamental entity. Now, the thing is, I go back. Now I want to specify the actions for the object data. Click on add ARN. In the bucket name, you just type the bucket name, XYZ-S3 Mumbai. Then in the object name, if you want to specify this action only on particular objects, you define the name of them. Else, in this example, I choose any. This means this policy I'm creating would be applied to every single data or object of the bucket. This applies to every content that's saved in that bucket. I click add. Now you don't have to do anything. Click on review policy. I can just name this bucket as custom S3 read only. That's it. Description: this policy will give read only access to our bucket. So what's that bucket is? That is XYZ S3 Mumbai. Fine. So this is a brief description just to describe the purpose of this policy. This policy will give the read-only access to a bucket XYZ S3 Mumbai. In the summary, okay. Let me just remove that. It doesn't include hyphens. Okay, that's fine. So the thing is that you make sure that in the summary, under the access level, it shows list and read. Click on create policy. My policy has been created. This is a main step that you have to perform. Most of the people, they perform the mistakes, or they make the mistakes in this step. So if I just go back to the list, let's go back to the list right now. If I go back, so we have performed two main actions. We have created the bucket and assigned the read-only access to one of the buckets. Now I go back to the IAM dashboard and create a group. I go to groups on the left-hand side and create a new group. Name it as read only access to Mumbai bucket, or read only access to S3. This is a group name. I just create any group right now. This one group, read only access to S3, or just name it as a bucket name, XYZ -S3 Mumbai. Let's make it as small letters. XYZ -S3 Mumbai policy. Okay, this is the name of the policy. Click on next step. This is the name of the group. I'm sorry. So what I've done is that I've created a group, right? XYZ S3 Mumbai policy. Click next step. Now I will attach that custom policy to this group. I go to policy type, or I can do it afterwards. If I want, I can do it afterwards. Or let's do that. I choose policy type. I choose customer managed, and then I will search for that policy. I think that policy should show up over there. Let me just scroll down. Let me. Yeah, this is the one. Fine. This is the one that we have just created. This is the one. Custom S3 read only. So I'll attach this policy to this group. Click on next step and click create group. As of now, this group, so this group has the permission, or has this policy attached to it. Okay. Custom S3 read only policy. Let me do one thing. If I can change the name of it, because it edit the group name. I should make it as custom policy demo. Okay, that's the name of the group. I've just changed it so that there's no confusion. So this group, custom policy demo, I go to this group, and I have this custom policy attached to it. So if I just go back to the same thing right now, if I just go back to the same thing, Let's go back. I've created a group, attach the policy to the group. Now, in the last two steps, I create a user, attach it to the group. I already have the user. I'll just create a new one and test it. So what I will do is that I go to users, create a new user, click on add user, and name it anything. For example, let's name it as my first name, Rohan. Okay. Then in that case, I choose AWS Member Console access only. That's it. I set a custom password for myself. Fine. I just uncheck this option so that I don't have to change the password at next sign in. Click on next permissions. Now I will attach this user to the group custom policy demo, which has this custom policy attached to it. Click on next set tags, next review, and create user. Now I log in on behalf of this user right now. Click close. So what I will do is that I go to the dashboard, copy this link, and I open some other browser and just paste it. Fine. So I'm signing in on behalf of this user. I just type in the username. Let's type in the password. Let's do that. Click on sign in. So I'm signed in. Now the thing is that I need to make sure that I'm not able to access anything else apart from S3. For example, I'm logged in as this IAM user. If I try to access anything, for example, I try to access EC2, I should get an error message. Let me show you. Can you see that? I'm not able to access any other service apart from the S3. For example, I go to Kinesis. I will get the access denied error message because I'm not able to, I don't have any access rights. But let's go to S3. I go to S3. I don't have any other permission. So let's go to S3. Can I list the buckets? Yes, I can. Can I go to any bucket? No, I can't. Because as per the policy, you can see it says access denied. I have got the read-only access to only one bucket. That's it. Only one bucket. So I can't access any of the bucket except if I go to date created, this one, XYZ S3 Mumbai. If I go to California bucket, I'll get the same message, access denied. But if I just go to Mumbai bucket that I just created, let me just go to date created. This bucket, I can read it. I'm not getting any access denied. I'm not getting any access denied now. If I just try to upload something, let's try to upload something. I am trying to upload something right now. You will see that it popped up an error message down below. And what's the error message is? Failed. If I click on view details over here, it says forbidden. So I only have the read-only access to one bucket. That's it. I can't perform any other operation. That's how you define and implement the custom IAM policies that exactly you go about doing it. So this is how our lab is completed now. Fine. This is how you do that. Now, the two main things that we have to cover up. One is the account settings. Now, account settings means that you define the password policy. See, sometimes whenever you want to change the password on your own, you get the notification or you get the prompt. The password should be lowercase or it should be alphanumeric. It should contain one special character, special symbol. So you can choose these password policies so that if the time comes when the IAM users have to change the password on their own, they can follow these protocols. For example, the password they choose, you can set the password length. The password should need at least one uppercase. at least one lowercase, for example, right? At least one number, at least one non-alphanumeric character. For all the users, you can expire the password after 90 days, right? So you can apply this password policy, which will be applied to every IAM user. So when the time comes when they have to change the passwords, they can choose a complex password on their own. Fine. Now the last thing that I'll discuss with you is called the MFA, that stands for Multifactor Authentication. So you guys, you may have used this and you may be using it or may have seen it, something called Gemalto key fob. That's called the RSA keys in the short form. Let me show you that how exactly they look like. This. Fine. That's how they look like. The purpose of these devices, they're called RSA keys or Gemalto key fobs. RSA keys or Gemalto key fobs. They generate a PIN so that every time you log in, you get a new PIN. This enhances the security of your logins. You log into your computer, your business applications, your enterprise applications. These are much more secure for you to log in. This adds on the extra layer of security. Now you can enable the same capability on your IAM Users smartphone. Now let me do one thing. Let me just connect my phone right now, real quick, and I will show you that option, that how exactly you do this. Okay, so this is my phone screen. I'll show you the steps real quick. So what I will do is, let's imagine one thing. Let's take one example. I want to enable this option for, let's imagine Kunal. I go to Kunal right now, and I want Kunal to use his smartphone as the MFA device. So I take the physical possession of Kunal's phone. I go to Kunal's account, go to security credentials, and under Kunal's account, can you see this? There's one option that says security credentials. Under security credentials, we have assigned MFA device, which says not assigned as of now. I click manage. Now I choose virtual MFA device, which means that Kunal can install the Authenticator app installed on his mobile device or computer. Basically, we use mobile devices like tablets, iPhones, iPads, any smartphone. Now, the thing is, let's do one thing. Let's go back to the my phone. Okay. Now, I go to the App Store. You have to download a software which you get for free on the Play Store, on the App Store. That is Google Authenticator. If you search for it, you find it out real quick. It's a Google Authenticator. It's a free software. Okay. I already have that. I can open it. You can get it free on the App Store or the Play Store. It worked perfectly fine on the Android phones or on the iPhones, iOS. Let's imagine this is Kunal's phone. I take his phone and install the Google Authenticator on the same device. Now, I want to make this device as the MFA device so that when he logs in to his respective account, his individual account, he uses the same device to log in. So I go to his account, choose virtual MFA device. If I use Gemalto token like the RSA key, I use this one, but I use the smartphone. Click continue. Now it will ask me to scan the QR code. So what I will do is that I click on begin setup down below, and you see this option says scan barcode. Now what I will do is that I click on show QR code, and I will just scan this code, and you will see that automatically it detected Kunal's account. Let me show you one more time. Let me just delete it. Let me show you one more time. So what I will do is that I click on begin setup, scan the barcode, and I scan this barcode right now, right? It automatically detected this thing. Now I need two pins to activate MFA. The first pin is 990825. Let me just put that over here. 990825. Now just wait for the other pin to appear. Now this pin gets refreshed after every 30 seconds. So the next pin is 355975. 355975. Now the thing is that I click on assign MFA, and this activates the MFA on Kunal's iPhone. Okay, this is done. Can you see that? It's done. You have successfully assigned the virtual MFA. The virtual MFA will be required during next sign-in. Click close. Now, I will hand over the phone to Kunal, saying, Kunal, you can use this phone as the MFA device. Go ahead and start using it. Okay. So let's log in on behalf of Kunal and see that how the things work for him. So I go to the dashboard. I copy this link right now, and I just go to the other browser. So I just paste this link and just try to log in on behalf of Kunal. Let's do that. So let's do one thing. I just type in Kunal's username and the password. Let's do that. And immediately it will ask for the MFA code. What will happen next? Kunal will just search for the Google Authenticator. Okay. He will see that, okay, let's open the Google Authenticator, because he will be using the Google Authenticator to see the pins. So let me just search for it once again. Yeah, here we go. Google Authenticator. He will see what's the pin is getting. Now he has to type this pin and hit submit before this expires. You can see there's a timer ticking in. He types this as 250146 and clicks on submit. And here we go. He's able to sign in. So that's how he will use this phone as the MFA device. He used the Google Authenticator app to generate a new PIN after every 30 seconds. This means that the next time he signs in, he uses a new PIN. This enhances the security of the accounts. Now, you can also do that on the root account. On the root account, you can just go to the dashboard, and can you see this thing? Activate MFA on your root account. You just go over there, click on manage MFA, and the same process you have to follow the same process. Fine. Now, as for the best practice, you should always enable the MFA at least on the root account. For the IAM, it's your wish. But for the root account, it has to be enabled, because root account is the account which is the topmost on the hierarchy. It's the account with the highest level of access. So to make it more secure, you activate the MFA on the root account. This is the best practice that you should follow in the business environment. Fine. Now, there's one more question that's being asked by so many people. What if I'm not able to get the physical access to user's phone? For example, Suresh is on the west coast of US. I'm on the east coast. So it doesn't make any sense having Suresh saying, hey Suresh, come to my office, I want to activate the MFA on your phone. Okay, so how can you access the MFA on a phone that you can't get your hands on? The answer is, you go to the user account, go to security credentials, click the same option, assigned MFA device, click manage. Choose the same thing, virtual MFA device, click continue. Now, because you don't have the phone with you, you just click on alternatively, you can type the secret key, click on show secret key, and email this entire key to that user, because you can't get his phone because maybe he's far away from you. You just email this link to that user. Now that user has to download the Google Authenticator, but what he will do is that instead of scanning the barcode, he will click on this option, manual entry. Can you see that? Manual entry, where my cursor is, down below. So what he'll use? Manual entry. Fine. And in the manual entry, he's just typing his username, @account alias, and in the key, he just copy and paste the same key that you will send him to his email. So he's typing his account Suresh at the account alias, and the key, he will just copy and paste the same key that you will send him across, and he can activate the MFA on his own. Okay, so that's all about the multi-factor authentication. It's a very important service. Fine. So guys, that being said, this completes the IAM. I thank you so much for your time and patience, and this completes the entire conversation on IAM. So these are things which are very important for you to understand at the solutions architect associate level. So that's it. Thank you so much.